You're listening to Data Center Therapy. Please take a number and an engineer will be right with you. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Data Center Therapy, a podcast from IVOXY Consulting that talks all things IT with a healthy dose of empathy. I'm your host, Matt Yeti, and each episode we dive into the wide range of technologies that make up this beautiful sandbox called IT that we all play in. We share our hopes and dreams, opinions both positive and critical alike, all with a touch of empathy, because at the end of the day, we all need a seat on that couch. Now, Mr. Coslino is taking the day off today, slacking as usual, so it's just me right now, but we've made up for it and then some. We want to welcome back to the show Mr. Jason Burrell, formerly of IVOXY Consulting and now with Rubrik. Jason, how you doing?
Doing good, Matt.
It is really awesome to have you on. Now, is this the first time we've had you on the pod?
It is. I'm honored.
Okay. Last week, Chris Crow. This week, Jason Burrell. It's kind of IVOXY alumnus. We should rename this pod. But it's great to have you on. And you've been, well, why don't you tell us a little bit about, including IVOXY, a little bit about your career, how you've arrived where you are today.
Sure, yeah. So I started in IT when I was 16, working help desk at a local hospital. So I've been in IT a long time. From there, went off to college and then, took various IT admin jobs, moving into, a senior architect role at a startup. And then I moved over once virtualization hit and had success with that. I moved over to IVOXY Consulting for, I think, around 4.5 years. And now time flies, and I've been at Rubrik for 4.5 years, watching that company grow from about 100 employees to where we are. I think we're like at 1,700 right now.
That's incredible. I can't believe that you've already been at Rubrik for as long as you were at IVOXY either. Which just means
it flies.
I've been at IVOXY now over 7 years. So yeah. Well, I'm glad that we've still been able to stay in touch and do business together too. So at Rubrik, you're not doing what you were when you started though, right?
Yeah, exactly. I've held a couple roles. I mean, I was one of the founding sales teams, so on the technical side. So I covered the entire Pac Northwest, and as we grew, we added all these teams. I moved on to an enterprise role, covering just the your top major accounts and your Starbucks and your Microsofts in the region. And then I just recently took a new role in the emerging technology team, which is kind of a startup within a startup. So I'm redoing what I did early on in Rubrik, which is bringing products to market from scratch that are very early on, and bringing them to everybody. It's a pretty fun role. It's really exciting, and it's nice to be back in a very agile team and feeling like a startup again.
Sure. Well, I mean, like you said, a startup within a startup. You went and were one of the first 100 employees, like you mentioned. How do you? Obviously, there's always risk associated with something like that, but surely there are countless startups at any point where they have less than 100 employees. What made Rubrik, and I guess that leads into how you're tackling this emerging technologies role as well, but what made Rubrik attractive or enough to say, hey, I'm going to take this shot here, leave an established company with a secure job, and I'm going to take a leap here. What about Rubrik gave you that security?
Yeah, it's kind of, there's a combination of things that happen. Being in IT for a long time, you can sort of look at market trends. And like at the time I moved, it seemed like there was a lot of storage startups and not many backup startups. So that's a technology that hadn't been refreshed in a long time, where storage had been refreshed, and I missed that wave. So it seemed like the timing was right, but really there's a lot of great technology companies that start out and don't end up well, even if they have great ideas. So it really comes down to people and execution, and I think I just got lucky. I didn't know enough really back then. I know a lot more now, but when it came to it, I was very fortunate to land at the right place with a good set of people that are actually really nice, humble, and helpful, and help me in my career grow. But really, it's just, it comes down to just good people and lucking out sometimes.
It's funny that you say you kept an eye out for the market, and storage had kind of had its refresh already. But you were right. I mean, backup for decades felt like the needle barely moved. It's something that the new guy at the company would always inherit, always struggle with, always hated it, and it always got pushed down the totem pole in terms of priorities. And then you've got Rubrik coming in, and oh, now there's a completely different way of doing it. It's a lot of exciting stuff. And I've even said to some of my customers, I can't believe I'm sitting here talking to you, genuinely excited about what's happening in the space of backup. And yet it is, right. It's one of those areas that you're seeing tangible leaps in progress, and it's not just this incremental, minor improvement in that. So, what does emerging technologies mean when it comes to Rubrik? Because we all know what backup and recovery is.
Yeah, so I mean, when I started at Rubrik, we did a very small subset of what we do now. So, just did VMware backups, and it takes a certain type of talent, I think, to have such a limited capability set and find the right market for it. So, I'm on this group with a couple of key people in Rubrik early days, and yeah, emerging technology is really just everything that we come out with now it needs a tactical team. So something that's either a new idea or a new market that we're tackling that's different enough to where the typical sales team that's focused on backup and our engineering is focused on backup. We had to separate this off to focus on basically different markets, because if you take your existing team and shift them that much, you don't want to abandon your current customers, right? You need to keep improving that product. You can't, so that has to keep moving along. But
you can't take that for granted.
You can't take that for granted. It's a competitive space as always, so you have to, so you keep them doing their thing, and then you have this tactical team that goes out and figures out, like, we know there's a good fit here, but how do we sell it? How do we be very, very careful with our first set of customers to make sure that they're not getting oversold? You give a sales group a product, they'll go sell it, but you need to be very careful in the early days to make sure that you're finding the right customers that find value in it, and that they're going to help you along the road.
So in your role then, are you an evangelist? Are you an SE like as you were, but focused on specific other emerging technologies, or is it more of a skunkworks thing? I mean, how would you paint yourself?
Yeah, so it's a GA product. So I'm an SE, but I just handle now a very large region for a very specific product. So as we bring this product Sonar to market, I am, sitting in between the customer and engineering, like, very tightly. So and product development. So I'm getting feedback from customers. I'm now influencing the development of the product very closely and on a daily basis, giving feedback in so that we can rev this product very quick. So it's like an SE role, but a lot more on the development side and really close to the customers as well.
Well, I can speak firsthand to the benefits of the model, and as you say, I remember when you went over to Rubrik and IVOXY became a pretty strong partner fairly quickly. Saw a lot of success, a lot of happy customers, which is my main definition of success. And I remember you were telling me, hey, basically got a direct line to the devs over Slack. We use Slack internally, and you were showing me all this cool stuff they were doing. And hey, this is one thing that I asked, and a week later, boom, we were rolling out code with it. Now, obviously, as a product matures, there a ton more process has to go in, right? Because the bigger a code base gets, breakage is a possibility. But to hear that was a pathway to success, I think. I mean, you saw a lot of customers saying, hey, what about this? And then it worked. And it wasn't, oh, wait 18 months and maybe you'll get it. It was a lot more rapid than that. And it's good to see that is being repeated in the emerging technologies, because I think that's a big piece of success. If you can demonstrate to your customers that you're responsive to legitimate needs, it's just, I mean, how many customers have you sold a product that might be a good product and then support fails them afterwards? And it's just, no matter how good that product is, it's a bad taste in the mouth. So that's a fantastic thing to see Rubrik doing again, I think, with Sonar.
Yeah, what's weird about an early on product is you build something that is, viable enough that it has a fit, but you don't know where it's going to take you. And it's really interesting. Like, I had preconceived conditions. Like, I've been in IT, 20 something years. I think I know where this product should go. And that totally changed after I talked to 100 and something customers over the last couple months. And they're like, no, this is the direction it needs to go. We change. And that's what's nice about not having like a very long roadmap. You can make shifts quickly in the infancy that's going to make a big impact later on, but that has to come from the customers. I mean, I'm just one voice, but when you start talking to hundreds of people, you really get a good vision of where you need to take it. And I think that's the
Well,
coolest thing.
I think, and not to make any enemies here, but one example that I constantly bring up and kind of rail on sometimes is Google. Google is a company driven by engineers. And engineers don't always have strong user experience skills. Functionality wise, yeah, it works. It does this, it does that. Great. Okay, how do I interact with the thing? This was definitely designed by an engineer. It's something you might hear somebody when they're trashing the UI. And that's why, like you said, listen to the customers outside of just kind of getting high on your own hubris. Hey, it works great. It does this. Well, people actually have to use this thing, and maybe we should listen to how they're using it. And that's good to hear that Rubrik's doing that. Now, we've mentioned Sonar a few times. What is Sonar?
Yeah, so sonars are our foray into data classification. So what that, which can mean a lot of things, and it's a broad term, but essentially what it is finding sensitive data inside someone's environment, or really any data. So when you think of, a file server or, VMs, they've been around a long time. They've been migrated maybe, a couple times, 3, 4 times. Data lives out there forever, and I don't know about you, Matt, but I don't really sit on my weekends and clean up my old documents. Storage is pretty cheap these days, so I got better things to do with my time. So when you take that to like a large corporation, the same thing. All those users aren't sitting around cleaning up their old stuff. They're leaving it there on servers and database dumps and things like that. So you have this
Yeah,
massive amount
it
of
was a problem
data.
when storage was at a premium, and now
Yeah,
that it's not, oh my goodness.
yeah, but what's really not driving it yeah, you could save some space maybe of cleaning up MP3s, but that's really not what's driving it lately. It's actually this constant, I would say, risk of other regulations that are now fining people for having this data, or this data leaking. Like maybe you get ransomware and you hit a server and that server leaked a bunch of social security numbers. That actually has a real cost to it these days, and it's not going down. The regulations keep going up.
Well, and on top of that, a multi-billion, tens, hundreds of billion-dollar valuation companies, not that it's less serious for them, but they might be able to absorb the cost of a significant fine. Where now let's sit in the medium business, where a fine could potentially put you out of business for real. So it's definitely a heavy topic.
Yeah, that was one thing I didn't. I mean, I don't really think about this stuff day to day, but when I joined this emerging tech, part of this, I was like, well, how does someone justify a purchase of some tool like this? And then we started hearing, we just had to ask the customers. We don't know. We're a backup company. We're trying to figure this out. And it's like, well, I'm a bank, and if I expose credit card numbers for all of my users, I then have to reissue all of those. That costs $15 a month.
Hmm.
Then I have to give them credit card monitoring for the next 2 years at $20 a month per user. So you're
Oof.
talking, yeah. So it adds up quick, and then but the IT. What's funny is that's usually a legal compliance role. So where we bridge this with IT is very, it's interesting. Some companies have separate departments for that. The IT person has no clue what the fines are, and they think everything's fine. They know there's data there, but they don't know what the costs associated to it. And then whose budget does it come out of? All that stuff we have to figure out when we're bringing a product to market.
Yeah, I tell you, one thing that really encourages me about this is every time you think of a concept or a piece of security or strategy or things that you approach, usually it means, oh, I've got to now bring in another product. And not only do I have to bring in another product, but I have to set that process up to collect the data and then scrape the data and then analyze it and then report on it. And what happens if that process breaks? Or, in my opinion, almost most importantly, what about my production environment? Is it going to take a hit performance wise? Because once again, I'm going through and churning through all of this. Where the one thing I really like about Sonar is, hey man, I've already backed all this data up. I've already seen all this data. I can back it up efficiently. I can restore it quickly and efficiently. That's great. Again, not to take that for granted, but I've got this data set sitting here. What else can I do with it? Well, I've already scraped. I don't have to go back to the well to do that analytical work. That's my favorite part of it, is that it's thinking, okay, I've got this data. I don't have to go get it again. Let me just work on what I've got and do cool things with it.
Yeah, there's a couple groups we keep happy, as I like to say. Is part of the infrastructure teams, they're super excited they don't have to buy a more expensive, NAS, because they're not scanning this data twice, like you mentioned. It's not, we have this extra CPU, why not use it? it's a 2-for-1. We're scraping the data anyway. Let's get some more value out of it. That's a win out the gate from big, usually when you think of starting a data classification project, you're talking building servers, SQL servers, collectors,
Exactly.
installing agents. No one wants that stuff. And then it
Then I
becomes
have
so
to build
complex.
certain windows, make sure it doesn't
Yeah.
run in a crossover with my backup window. Oh no, this and that, and yeah.
Complexity, right?
Eventually, you run out of hours in a day to do stuff.
You do, and like you do really want to hunt for this stuff, and yeah, so it has to be easy enough, and that's what I think one thing that Rubrik's done well just all along is like it's got to be simple. So that's maintained in this product, which is really nice. So it's really easy, So again, about a 5-minute thing to enable. You're scanning stuff, and you're not really having to add any infrastructure. And then you see where that takes you. It's it can take you a lot of different places, in terms of use cases. But it's pretty neat to watch someone just enable this, and they're like, oh, I knew something was there, but I didn't know it was on my SQL server because I thought, I didn't think we were dumping data there accidentally. And it saves them some, they can rest easy at night, kind of like with backup.
And so, since all of us, like you mentioned in your history and career, we've all worked in ops at one point or another, and I think that is absolutely a required bit of experience for what we do. You can't speak to it without having to live through it. And so, when we talk to our mutual customers, we know what they're dealing with. I remember my job before IVOXY, we would start an audit up. With I can't, it might have been PwC, but anyway, the third party would come in, start their audit. By the time they were wrapping up, we were ramping up for the following year's audit all over again. So I'm thinking something like this could take months-long processes and knock them down into days or hours. I'm thinking, right? I think that's incredible.
Yeah, I mean, and you know how it is with the audit. Like, what became the priority when that audit started happening? That and nothing else. Everything else gets put on the back burner. You don't want to do this stuff. Like, it's audit first, though. Like, that's the...
Well, you can't change anything. You can't fix or improve anything, so everything's in this frozen state perpetually.
Yeah, and auditors are like, they get lucky a lot. We call it like audit luck, where they happen to find that one thing. They ask for 20 things, they cherry pick, and then you're like, of course. So yeah, this just kind of gives you insurance because every day a backup runs anyway. Now we're just telling you what the data's there, and like you'll know if there's a credit card pops up because someone's saving it for booking travel, and it's not your fault. You're the IT admin, but you're now the data owner, and you can't control everybody. You have processes in place, but now you can actually validate that, and it's already done for you in advance. It's all automated. You're not even having to go in and run these scans. It's just something that's turned on. So you just logged into the dashboard and you say, okay, here's all the stuff.
So this is based on pattern matching, and obviously out of the box there are some templates already rolled out, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So I mean, we try to do the more advanced stuff pre-built. So like, for example, a credit card, we're not just going to match a 16-digit number. We're gonna do a LUN check on it and validate it's a valid credit card number before we surface the results. So they're not just simply a string. But to say any product like this is perfect is a lie. There's going to be some false positives in there. There's going to be some false negatives, but it does give you a good idea to grab that low-hanging fruit.
Can I say how refreshing that is? And I will say, not only from a customer and operator standpoint, which I can still speak to, but from a partner standpoint, I despise when companies overpromise, because when inevitably that overpromise is underdelivered upon, I'm taking the brunt of it. What do you got? You are, and I am, and all I can say is, hey, I didn't make the promise. It doesn't matter. It falls, and I want to be able to stand up and say, hey, I will own this. And so when I hear, hey, we're not going to oversell ourselves. We're going to admit where we still fall short and aspire to improve, or where what we're going to tell you exactly what we are today and where we hope to be. That is a breath of fresh air, and I have found that with very few customers. I've had meetings with other partners, not many, where we walked in and said, you know what, probably not a good fit for your requirements. And I think all that does is it just builds trust, right? And all my salespeople out there, plug your ears, right? But I think overall it forms a great relationship, and it's truly a partnership when you can sell a product to a customer that they need, they're going to love, and then just being honest about it. It's a nice way to do business, and I appreciate that out of Rubrik for sure.
But I mean, you have to have a separate team to do that because if you're moving things really fast, like in a dev scenario, right, where we're changing stuff, maybe based on customer feedback in a month or two, you really you have to be really close to dev, so that's one thing you have to be able to say no and and be accurate with that. But it's a tough job, you have to tell a lot of people, sorry, this is early code, this is not the right fit for you, and yeah, I know you want this, but like we don't run on that data source, or we don't, so that is it's a it can be frustrating sometimes selling an early product, but like because I've done that before, and yeah, like for example, you guys, you trust, we have a trust built because saying no is the right thing to do, and you just have to continue doing that, and that's just part of early product, and you have to just get used to
Yep.
saying
Well,
no for the right reasons.
let me ask about your dev process. Well, in terms of your interaction with it, okay, early days, Rubrik, um, base product, right? Base product, backup recovery. You had a pretty good close line to dev, pretty rapid development cycle, and then obviously mature processes develop themselves. And they, now that you've broken off the startup, I'm guessing some of the devs are same, right? It's not a completely separate island team.
No, we have a fully separate dev team.
Completely,
Completely.
even the development of it.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. Well,
Yeah.
I was
So we
gonna
don't take
say
any
how I was
resources from the other teams. So
okay.
because we
I was
didn't
gonna
want to take
ask
anything from them.
if that mature um, attitude or growth made it difficult to break it back down and get a little more loosey goosey at the beginning. But if it's a completely separate team, then you can just basically install those values from ground zero and go again.
Yeah, I mean, our team is a mix of some, just like the sales team side. It's like we took some experienced engineers that have been working at Rubrik for 4 years and like moved them over. But then we mix in new blood as well, and so it is people that understand the whole process, but like they have a hunger to move fast, just like
Yep.
we do. So it takes the right temperament, and that's like again, when you're building a startup within a startup, it takes a special, you have to look for those right qualities of people on both sides, the engineering side and the engineers that want to work late, and it's not a clock in clock out job, it's very intense. They're okay with a lot of feedback constantly, and then the same thing for the sales side, like we have to improve as well, so it takes the right personality.
So if I'm a company and right now I'm feeling the very real effects of the COVID-19 crisis and budget is certainly pinched, or I don't know what the future holds, but obviously this is an important security and compliance is an important thing because the government's not taking any time off, that's for sure, right? And standards based, and then that's one side of things. Or hackers certainly are taking opportunities like never before to go after. Um, how is this? What makes this a must-have versus a nice-to-have, right? I mean, how does that work? How do I prioritize it?
Yeah, and it's different for every company, but what I've seen is which I didn't know about starting this, but I guess there's this cyber risk insurance that everyone carries. It's some sort of like you pay whatever monthly for it, just like auto insurance, but it covers you in case you have an incident. And when you do that policy, it asks you a litany of questions like, do you know where your data is, and is it secured? And you can't answer that question honestly without a tool that's searching that. So for some, they've justified it based just off simply that they can reduce a premium that they're paying today. Others, it's they've either been hit by a ransomware attack and they had to pay those fines, and those fines will be much more expensive than any like software cost, right? They can get very expensive very quick. So the more security conscious, um, and also like the benefit of like an early access phase is usually we're looking for a partnership with a customer, so that might be able to grant them access to a you know like an early adopter sort of deal, in some cases. So that's another thing. So if you see this as something down your road, it's like as the product matures, obviously you can charge more for it. So um, some people want to be on that early, in the early side of it, and they get benefits for that. We want to help them out
Absolutely.
too. I mean,
We have definitely seen that firsthand. Not to walk backwards but for a minute, you did mention ransomware. Now, and that's not specifically a sonar focused thing, but that's also what radar will take care of, right?
Yeah, so radar identifies what servers are impacted and how to recover from them. But what happens, we've heard from other customers when we start talking sonar, is the next question is the CIO comes down and says, what were on those 5 servers? Because I've got to go pay somebody. I've got to go tell these people that I lost their social security number because this might have been exfiltrated out of the system. So that's where
Yeah.
sonar comes in and says, okay, you had this on those 5 servers. So you recovered quickly with radar. You identified it's these 5 servers, and you've recovered quickly with radar. But there's the other piece of that is liability, and that's where sonar comes in and says, okay, you had this, you were exposed to this sensitive data, and if you can get ahead of it and you remove the sensitive data, like extra dumps of things like that, now you at least can rest easy that if you did have some sort of attack, you aren't exposing things unnecessarily that could get you in really big trouble.
Sure, sure. Oh man, yeah. It's to the point now where small municipalities are getting hit with, you know, BitLock and all kinds of data leaking, and I think the collective public trust in any company that asks for any bit of information is rightfully so decreasing. So the mitigation techniques are super important.
Yeah, we had an odd one the other day too, where a customer, it seems to be happening a lot during COVID, is that they were getting hit with fraud for employment security. So like, they're like, wow, we're getting a lot of requests for unemployment that aren't real, that are these are employed. Like, where are they getting this data? So they were able to use sonar to validate that those social security numbers aren't stored on their systems. So they knew they didn't leak from them. So there's all sorts of use cases around this stuff.
When that
We're still
sounds to me
figuring that
like
out.
that sounds to me like a hey devs, can we tie this in with our own APIs or our system that we could check against? Is that
No,
some
you
some
can just
how do,
search for anything with Sonar. You can just put in a list of dictionary values you want to go find, and they'll go crawl your whole system.
oh,
So
I could feed that from my system then and push it
yeah,
that way.
so you could say, okay, we've seen this odd behavior where 40 of our people have been filed claims against. That's odd, and they obviously know
Hmm.
these people's names, and they know where they work, and they know their socials and things like that. Like, are we storing this data in a public share, and someone took it? Like, you can
Huh.
probably you can at least get to the data. Like, yes, we're storing that, and it was available to everybody, which would
Well,
be
it definitely sounds like the data connectors will get fleshed out as more customers use it and come up with ways that they want to do ingress and egress in terms of scanning and checking and feeding. And you can also use similar to regex or regex for custom templates. Is that right?
yeah. Those are use cases like maybe a patient ID number is very sensitive, or to a college it's a student ID number. It's something that they're liable. I heard today like a VIN number is also sensitive for certain, like if you're doing a if you're selling maybe auto insurance, or you're selling credit against that, if you know that it ties someone's identity to their car, and that's now deemed
I'm
sensitive.
not a fan of license plates for that very reason,
Yeah.
to be honest with you.
Yeah.
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 All right. So, what's something that you learned that you did not expect, caught you by surprise?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of stuff. What this, it seems like smaller organizations, the IT director is very aware of data security, and it's actually a priority at the top level, director and CIO. And there's not really good people don't really have tools today to handle it. Either they were way too expensive and too heavy lifting. They required a lot of professional services from the vendor. It's a complex architecture, so it just wasn't worth it to them. And then there's the other side that bought a tool, and then like the guy left. It's kind of like backup. In a lot of ways, it's just like it was too complex, and then we turned it off, and then. Yeah, there's others. So the learning is really around how do people justify a product like this, because it's not we'll take away your backup server and your disk appliance and things like that. It's like, no, there's how do you justify a product for risk? It's
Yep.
just
And that you
it's
likely don't have something in place for today.
yeah, that you're not replacing something, right? It's
Right.
a new thing, so that's it's a lot. You have to learn a lot, and it did. Yeah, we're still learning.
Well, it's interesting. I'm going to throw one more curveball at you, and not to jump off Sonar, but it's interesting to me that you are a principal SE not of the Sonar group, but of the Emerging Technologies group, right? So So I mean, sonar is definitely not the end of the story. I'm not asking you to spill any roadmap, but and I don't even know if there exists one yet because sonar is still so young that there's a lot of room for growth there. But this is something where you, at some point in the future, will be looking to hit the reset button again and push another game changer.
Yeah, that's the idea. Where our customers push us and where we hear from we have these customer advisory boards and things like that. And as Sonar matures, just like Radar's been out for 2 years, it's a very mature product and a ton of people have it and everyone knows how to sell it and knows exactly what ransomware is. It's a very, everyone knows what it means and why it's important, and now it's real, and it wasn't a couple years ago, right? It was kind of some people got it, now everyone thinks about it. So the same thing with data classification and data governance is like now everyone knows there's regulations and what they have to adhere to, and as that matures and it's like has all its documentation and everything's, we've made it through these first couple phases of the product, then yeah, I might be onto something else, and then I'll start reboot this whole thing again and back to square one and figuring out another thing to do with this data. There's so much to do out there. It's that's the beauty of like not stopping. It's like you have a solid core product and then you enhance on top of it things that people find really real value out of. Not just building a tool to build a tool. We see that a lot in IT. I think
Oh, do not get me started.
Exactly. So yeah, I mean, you've seen it all the time. It's like, why did you build this? Like, it's cool, I guess, but like, no, we need customers that find real value out of stuff, and we'll see where the customers always guide us in the right direction.
Yep. Don't give me different, give me better. That's all I ask. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Jason, thanks for making the time, man. I know you're super busy now, taking a lot of meetings, and I do definitely appreciate your time, and I'm sure all the listeners do too. It's good to give you a chat and see your face too, as we don't work quite as closely anymore as we used to 4.5 years ago, but definitely it's always good to chat with you. And if anybody out there listening wants to have a chat with Jason and listen to more about what he's talking about, definitely reach out to us, contact us, and we can definitely put something together virtually right now, but hopefully we'll all be meeting in person, shaking hands again freely as soon as possible.
Yeah, I mean, like, again, it's like, partners like yourself and getting on the early floor of this stuff too, like you did with Rubrik. It's really cool that you're able to give us feedback as well as the customers. So it's been really, exciting to work with you closely again as I'm bringing this to market, because you got to see an early preview of this, and it's it's awesome to have, partners like IVOXY Consulting come in and, find the fit where it makes sense, right? And
Yeah.
And you keep my life a lot easier because you're going to tell them no before I have to if it's not going to work. So I really appreciate that. You have a good moral compass on technology. You're not going to oversell things. So I trust you to be a partner with me on this.
Appreciate that, Jason, and likewise. Well, thanks again for joining us, man. It's always good chatting with you, and we hope to have you on again soon. And best of luck, and we'll be in touch for sure.
Sounds good. Thanks, Matt.
All right, yeah. Well, just so anybody who's still listening out there, we do have a special offer to anyone who's interested in discussing Rubrik with us. Check out the show notes to learn more. The URL's in there, but I'm going to read it off to you in case you can type from memory. But visit us at ivoxy.com/data classification. That's data-classification. That URL's in the show notes, so you can find it there. But go to that URL to learn more about how to claim a gift when you take a meeting with us. So yeah, reach out, and we can chat about Rubrik and Sonar and all the cool stuff that they're doing over there. If you are not yet a subscriber to Data Center Therapy, find us on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or anywhere that the good podcasts are hosted. For Jason, I am Matt. Thanks again for listening to yet another episode of Data Center Therapy. Have a good one, everyone.